This is NDDC Today.
Good evening and happy holidays. Well, things are a bit calm in this past 1 week. No flax yet, as we've been receiving for the past 1 month or so. All kinds of accusations and counter-accusations about the NDDC coming from so many varied, uncharted quarters. Now, if one gets involved in all of this, it's very easy to forget that the NDDC was set up in the first place to develop the Niger Delta, not to test the probity of its people. So rightly, as some of our respondents have said, that the NDDC must remember that it was set up to develop. And everybody who is concerned should always remember that the NDDC was set up to develop the Niger Delta. And the best we can all do for it is to help it in doing this. So a few things might go wrong here and there, but as they say, you do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's not forget that the NDDC was set up after years of agitation for equity for the people of the Niger Delta, whose landmass was being devastated by oil production activity, supplying 96% of the nation's wealth, yet enduring such huge negligence that the national conscience could no longer take it.
Since oil was discovered in the Niger Delta in 1956, the entire country were more interested in the oil than the environment and the people. The result was, we took the crude oil, we forgot to give the people water. We flew within the deltas, we forgot to give them access road. We built posh houses for oil workers and forgot the owners of the land. So they live in thatched houses in the place.
I am one of those, the traditional rulers, who went to Obasanjo in 1998 and 1999 to plead with him to set up another body after the demise of Umpadek. Because it was the period of so many people who didn't come from Niger Delta region that since Umpadek did not satisfy our curiosity or our yearnings, that there shouldn't be anything like intervention agency anymore. But we gave reasons why another board should be constituted. Obasanjo listened to us, and that brought about the NDDC.
After so much agitation and pressure catalyzed by the Odi incident, the then Olusegun Obasanjo administration, after much political meanderings and concession agreements, established the NDDC. Niger Delta was agog at last to occur. Initially, a flurry of activity as the first board, with marching orders from the president, swung into action. A lot of attention was first given to the abandoned projects of Umpadek, some of which dotted the landscape all over the Niger Delta. It was said then that the federal government funding was spasmodic, to say the best, and inadequate to tackle the Niger Delta problem. With the nascent NDDC, things would be different. At the start, the federal government had given a marching order to the first board to organize an international conference so that all shades of ideas, both national and international, would be accommodated in an eventual blueprint. Meanwhile, the first board set about quick fix projects. One of its most successful people-oriented schemes was the Free Health Program.
And this you get this you make God help them more, because we poor people we dey die for nothing sake because lack of money. We not get money. This operation wey they give with so now good thing. They say many people Now let many people come better life. Oh.
As the people come here, I can't come here, they can't do it. So now, I don't do free.
So immediately they do am if you waka.
As they do am finish, that's how I come down, that's how I begin waka, they go house. In short, the oil money self, I don't eat and well.
Then interventions in primary schools, secondary schools, building of jetties, then roads, bridges.
If you look at the volume of projects done by the NDDC over time, I don't think there's any institution in Nigeria that has done such volumes of projects.
So what went wrong?
In my view, the NDDC is just the most bureaucratic organization that you can have and the most supervised organization that I've ever seen anywhere in this country. It has the NDDC management. It's supposed to have a board. It should have the governor's advisory board or whatever, council or committee, whatever they call it. It has a presidential monitoring team. It has a house committee on the NDDC. It has the Senate committee on the NDDC. All these are patronage machineries for that organization. Except even the governors forum that hardly works because they do not even work. Because the way they do not, I'm not sure they are even consulted. Because the way the NDDC works is to see itself as a patronage machine from the presidency. So whoever sits at the villa controls the NDDC, use it as its own milking cow to do patronage for his supporters or his party's supporters. That's how it operates.
The periodic investigation of the NDDC by the National Assembly is something that is becoming suspicious. The NDDC is an interventionist agency. If you don't allow them in 365 days of the year to face their responsibility in the region they are assigned to develop, and you call them periodically to come and defend one thing and defend the other because of your interests, you will be drawing back development in the region. That's why you can see in recent time no physical thing is manifesting as the work they have done in the region. So the National Assembly should allow the NDDC a breathing space for them to really function. If they allow them to function, then we cannot see it manifest in the region. Then the interest, political interest that is in the National Assembly making approvals for the NDDC for the development to fly should be cut down. They should reduce their interest because their interest and those things like lobbying and all those things is making the region to suffer. We are the suffering end. We are suffering it because nothing is showing. The region for several times now we cannot see anything manifesting in the region.
Unfortunately, I can say that the first tenure led by Dr. Patrick recorded more achievements than what we are seeing now. Because probably those who were there were afraid. They didn't want to eat 80% of the revenue, embezzle the 80% of revenue, then using 20% to do the job for the region.
Yes, indeed. In the beginning, after assessing the needs of the Niger Delta and had to go about addressing them, the management came up with a plan. The plan was to integrate all development efforts and projects of all development agencies in the region, including all 9 state governments. It was professionally put together, and Niger Deltans applauded the idea. It was called the Niger Delta Regional Development Master Plan. At last, the panacea had arrived. But it never happened. As much as the master plan was marketed to state governments, barely any took notice. Successive administrations have tried to draw attention to the master plan with the aim of modifying and adapting it. So far, the necessary enthusiasm on the part of state governors is still wanting. Hopefully, after the forensic audit, it might be possible to revamp the idea. But meanwhile, development must continue.
What we're saying is that whether they are doing investigation forensically or anything, it should go side by side with the allocation meant for NDDC. And development should be going on. That is what the NDDC was set up for. Investigation into an NDDC should be holistic. It should encompass everything that has gone on in NDDC.
So the IMC is to remind that the NDDC was once focused, even with the scarce resources of its beginning. The IMC is saying, let us re-examine ourselves and remind what the NDDC was supposed to be. Correct the past and move on.
Go around Obama, you see the NDDC road, they are like this. Because the contractor settled for the first best. For me, this calling our people, giving our people a bad name to hang them at all times, I am not in support of it. And I'm also not in support of people stealing our money. But we cannot throw away the shite and the water.
I met the current acting managing director, a young man, Professor Ponde, okay, because I don't usually go there often. I met him, I found him very level-headed. I watched him. And you know me, I tell them to their faces, if they are criminals, I call them criminals to their faces. I told him that he looked level-headed. And I would tell some of the founding fathers, those existing. One of them is here, His Royal Majesty Eze-Young Obona from Owaza, the paramount traditional ruler. I mentioned to people like Professor Amakri, Professor Jaja Chinwa. I mentioned to Martin Agbedi. I mentioned to his Chief Dike Okorote. I mentioned to His Highness Wellington Okreka. Okay, many of them I mentioned to them. Professor Jason Osai, some of the surviving founding fathers. I told them, look, this man looks level-headed, and that if, for example, he's given the chance. I was telling the young man, look, you're on a precious seat. I don't envy you, because I know from the villa you get a lot of pressure. From the presidency you get pressure. From the National Assembly you get pressure. More so now from the ministry you get pressure. The youth will put you on pressure. Troncon will put you on pressure. Then the contractors that are being owed criminally, you see the way I say, those that have done their job. I only know that some contractors collected the money and they've done, they didn't do job, which is criminal also. I say you will be under pressure. I say I don't envy you, but be level-headed. See what you can do, run an inclusive thing that will carry people along.
This is the task that must be done going forward. The NDDC cannot afford to stand still. The expectations of Niger Deltans is not met by accusations and counter-accusations. So now that we've reminded ourselves that the NDDC must continue to do what it's set up to do, including the care of its citizens, recently the NDDC flagged off the distribution of medical supplies, relief materials, and palliatives to some hard-hit members of the Niger Delta.
The Commission's acting managing director, Professor Kemebradikumo Ponde, lamented that the poor state of health facilities in most states of the Niger Delta region was a major constraint in the fight against COVID-19. The NDDC Chief Executive Officer noted that the Commission was always desirous to support the various governments and people of the states in the Niger Delta region in the area of quality health care delivery. He thanked the President and the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs for acceding to the request of the NDDC to intervene with the distribution of the materials, which he said are aimed at beefing up those already in use in the states to tackle the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic in the region.
The bulk of this package is actually medicals, equipment that will be sent to beef up the challenges of this coronavirus thing.
The NDDC boss further appealed that the palliatives, especially food items, should get to those who they were meant for, the vulnerable in the society.
We want to plead, as we said, during the inauguration of the committee that has done a very wonderful work, developing a template for equitable distribution to make sure that this thing gets to those who really need it and the vulnerable. It is not for everybody. It is for those who need it, please. And we'll be very grateful if it does so that NDDC will be seen to reach everybody.
In his own remarks, the NDDC Executive Director Projects, Dr. Cairo Ojugbo, said that the COVID-19 pandemic was the most important issue in the world today, noting that the NDDC had come up with programs to help curb the spread of the disease in the Niger Delta.
Government and peoples have come up with programs to help in curbing the disease. And one of the programs includes lockdown and getting people off the streets. And when that happens, you can no longer go to work, food becomes difficult, medicine becomes difficult. So the government cannot just stand aloof and watch while people starve and while things become difficult. It is in that extent and in that context that the NDDC moved to ameliorate the suffering of the people under its catchment area and its zone.
Also speaking, the chairman of the NDDC Palliative Committee, Mr. Soboma Jakrick, described the ceremony as laudable and historic. The Secretary General of the Traditional Rulers of Oil Mineral Producing Communities in the Niger Delta, TROMCOM, Chief Frank Okorafor, lauded the NDDC for coming up with initiatives while describing the Commission as an auxiliary gear that frees the people from difficult situations.
One thing that I want to tell the youths here, for you to hear me loud and clear, as a traditional ruler, as a master mariner from the Niger Delta, we must all agree that from this day forward, for NDDC to be so reliable, so dependable, NDDC must no longer be allowed to be a political breeding ground in this region.
A Niger Delta youth leader, Mr. Jonathan Lokbobiri, expressed his gratitude to the President for approving the distribution of palliatives to cushion the effects of COVID-19 on the lives of vulnerable people in the region.
My appeal to the management of the NDDC, like our Royal Highness, clearly admonished that we should jettison politics and focus on the development of our people. It is only when our people are happy, the stability of our region can be ensured, and the production of oil, which is the only mainstay of our economy, can be boosted.
The MD of the NDDC, Professor Keme Daniel Ponde, has charged that all the received materials must get to those for whom they are intended. Now, just to show that the NDDC is not all about controversy and claims and counterclaims, sometimes it's good to look back and say, well, at one point there were things that were done well and are still capable of being done well now. Let's take a look, for example, at the intervention of the NDDC in providing the much needed hostel accommodation for tertiary institutions all across the Niger Delta. And that wasn't so long ago.
The Niger Delta makes up 23% of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with a population of over 20 million people. 60% of Niger Delta are youth. About 2 million of the youth are students in tertiary institutions, spread across the 28 universities and 26 polytechnics in the Niger Delta. In this highly modernity-conscious region, education is an industry. People here feel utterly irrelevant without it. As a result, its higher institutions are packed full, year in, year out, with as many unadmitted as there are those admitted. pressure on higher education facilities here are on the richer scales. Accommodation, the most visibly hit. This scene tells the typical story of a high institution accommodation facility in the Niger Delta. Packed rooms, failed toilet facilities. A claustrophobic nightmare. A breeding ground for all sorts of deviant and immoral behavior. In 2004, the NDDC awarded contracts for the construction of the 19 prototype hostel projects in 17 universities across the 9 states of the Niger Delta. In July 2013, the NDDC prototype hostel project at the Imo State University of Owerri became the first to be completed and commissioned. It all emerged at a colorful ceremony. The project was the first hostel for students on the university campus. The mega hostel projects have 176 rooms with the capacity of over 500 bed spaces, including 48 bed spaces for physically challenged students. The hostels each come with standard electrical fittings, wardrobes, fans, air conditioners, 36 bathrooms and toilets, an administrative block with offices, stores, supermarkets, cyber cafe, as well as games room and student common room. On the project's bill is also a waterworks with a 20,000-liter overhead tank, a surface tank and a water treatment plant. In December 2013, the NDDC prioritized the completion of ongoing projects. The fast-track projects received the necessary attention in terms of funding and supervision. This led to the completion and commissioning within weeks of the hostel project at the Federal University of Technology Obinze Owerri early in February 2014. In the following month, March 2014, the NDDC was at the University of Benin for the commissioning and handover of the University of Benin hostel complex. The NDDC was not done yet with hostel commissioning for that year, as in November, the completed Delta State University Abraka hostel project was commissioned and handed over to the institution, making it the fourth of the fast-track projects. In July 2015, the prototype hostel at the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital, Akwa Ibom State, and the Michael Okpara University Umudike in Abia State were commissioned and promptly handed over to the universities. In spite of some setbacks, life has just taken a new turn in the universities in the Niger Delta.
It's a very beautiful place, actually. I mean, the first day I stepped in here, I was like, wow, is this really our hostel?
I'm so happy to be here because it's specially made for me. I came in here and I made the bed, the wardrobe, the reading table, and also the toilet.
In this hostel, students are really happy here. Thank NDDC.
The 36-year-old River State University of Science and Technology, UST, as it is popularly called, is the first technological university to be situated within the Niger Delta region and is one of the beneficiaries of the over 500-bed modern hostel built and delivered by the Niger Delta Development Commission. This magnificent edifice is divided into 3 floors, with all rooms furnished with beds, mattresses, pillows, ceiling fans, electrical fittings, wardrobes, reading tables and chairs. 2 rooms share a bathroom and toilet facility, while rooms for disabled students are all en suite. All a student needs is to just move in, with clothing and books, as everything else is made available by the NDDC. This gesture has greatly enhanced the standard of living for the students of the university. The hostel has 2 common rooms, including other state-of-the-art facilities such as a beautiful internal courtyard for relaxation and a 24-hour security service. The situation is the same in other tertiary institutions across the Niger Delta, where the prototype hostels are being commissioned. Some have other aesthetics like a bookshop, a photo studio, games rooms, barbing salon, and a beauty parlor, amongst others. Here at the Michael Okpara University of Agriculture, Umudike in Abia State, the same superstructure is replicated with all the facilities and furnishings. The students just move in with their clothes and books. According to students and school authorities at the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital, the NDDC hostel meets up the present and future needs of the medical students. Indeed, for them, it's a timely intervention.
Seriously, it's something the Nigerian government has really done to make sure that medical program and the University of Uyo medical students are quite comfortable, and for that, I and all other medical students are most grateful.
One can therefore understand the joy of the university community for the great relief which these hostels have brought to the students and their parents. The NDDC is not resting on its oars. With a revived mandate for change and a committed management, more smiles await youths of the Niger Delta.
So it's good to remind ourselves that the NDDC was set up to develop the Niger Delta, in case we easily get distracted because of all the flack coming from all angles. And the IMC is just saying that the NDDC can be repositioned to go back to its raison d'etre. I will be here every week to tell you how this is working out. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you same time next week.